Welcome back to episode 2, Wealth Building Strategies Podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeremy Constantino, along with
Tony Preston, second co-host, chair, whatever you would like to call us. sitting in the grand old seat right here.
We're
Awesome.
here in sunny Phoenix, Arizona.
People are melting outside. That's awesome.
Good thing I brought my jacket.
Yes. It's a good thing you did bring your jacket all the way from Ohio. That's sitting at a beautiful 75 degrees right now is their high, I think, today.
Yeah, Amelia texted me. She said, my wife texted me. She said, yeah, well, the windows are open today, pretty much all day, fresh air coming in through in the middle of August.
Yeah, it's there's no such thing as fresh air. We live in a controlled environment out here. So awesome. Let's get this thing, let's get our party started here.
Excellent. So yeah, in episode 1, we talked a little bit about my journey in real estate, what got me excited in real estate and what my passions going forward. So yeah, episode 2, let's get to know our second co-host, Tony Preston. So Tony Preston is a managing partner of JPAR Vantage, and where we are expanding, or JPAR Vantage, Tony is a managing partner of commercial services division across the entire country with JPAR. So it's super exciting. He's been a commercial broker owner of his own firm for 17 years. We just recently partnered and made the choice to join with JPAR. And through his real estate career, he's sold over $1 billion in real estate. Mm-hmm. So we're talking to somebody that's very experienced in brokerage and sales. But also, what's exciting, he's also has a passion for real estate investing too. He's also been a real estate investor for 17 years.
Yeah.
So this is exciting to do a podcast with you, Tony, as well as we're partners, of course, in the business. But so yeah, let's just get started with today's episode. So yeah, what got Tony excited and interested in real estate?
So my journey, obviously a little bit different than yours. I'm a third generation into this business. Wow. So between my grandparents, both of them at one time or another was in, my grandfather first started off in real estate and quickly got out of it because once he realized it took 30 days to get paid, he's like, no, I'm going to go sell a car and I'm going to get paid right that day that I sell that car. So it was too slow pace for him. You're
interject here. You're a lot slower pace than your grandfather. I'll just throw that ad in there.
Sometimes, yes. Yeah, I can go with that. I do take a more even kill approach to things. And I might get that from my grandmother, who, interesting enough, I actually started my real estate career working with my grandmother. My dad was in real estate. We used to have a company, Preston Real Estate, that was founded in Mesa by my grandfather's brother, Maury Preston. And so my journey started there. So when I became of age to get my real estate license, while I was going to junior college at that time, I went and got my real estate license and started working with my grandmother. And I think I was 19 years old or somewhere around there. And I looked like I was 14. So coming into a space where more people were more mature than me, it was a little challenging because, I looked like I was their kid as I'm chauffeuring them around to look at real estate. So as I started off, I've always had a real passion for business. And so I naturally was gravitating towards commercial versus on the residential side. But I started off with a really small company and, probably one of the things looking back, I wish I would have done maybe a little bit different, but I can't really change that because part of my journey getting back into real estate is I had to take this path. I actually left working with my grandmother and Brookie Coleman, which was a very influential person in the real estate industry, and she was my broker and awesome, smart lady. And I learned so much from her during that period of time, but I needed something bigger, so I went to a bigger brand thinking that they had the magic sauce. They had the magic pill that was going to fix my woes other than my baby face. I didn't have the capacity or capability of growing facial hair at the time, so it's not like I could grow a beard to make myself look a little bit older. So I went and worked for a Century 21 based brokerage, a good friend of ours that owned that. And both me and a really good friend of mine that just got out of the military service, and he got into real estate with me, and so we teamed up. And during that, we went through a lot of different hardcore training systems that existed back then, and on how to improve our salesmanship. And part of that is, we were making phone calls. Took out this big blue book called the Coles Directory, and we opened that up and looked into a zip code that we wanted to focus on, and you just started dialing for dollars. So it was, we were making over 100 phone calls a day, every day, Monday through Friday. And that's how I started getting myself exposed into real estate, is just that. And because of that phone activity that I had, I was actually brought into technology.
Hold on. So before you get into technology, can you talk about what attracted you to commercial as opposed to residential?
I think it had more to do with just the business side of from the transaction level, maybe even the relationship level. I've always been more naturally attracted to the business versus the lifestyle. I guess that's probably the best way to put it.
I think you said that the commercial is based on contracts, kind of, versus residential is based on the feelings, the emotion.
Yeah, there's a lot more emotional components to the residential transaction versus commercial. It's financially driven, right? So it doesn't make dollars and cents. And if it does, then you usually have some type of a deal that you're working towards. And then two, I think on the commercial side, it allows a lot more creativity. And that creativity is I naturally will gravitate towards that because I love getting into those types of creative deals. I have a good ability to be able to see a deal and know how to, or take a different look at how that deal could be structured, where it benefits everybody. But
let's dive into that.
Yeah.
So on residential, I put my residential hat. Really, the only thing I can do to the property is maybe put a new door on, put some new flooring, and hopefully increase the value. But in commercial real estate, in addition to doing cosmetic repairs, talk about the different ways we can add value to a retail space or an office space.
So you add value to commercial real estate because it's based off of financials, right? What kind of income can that property produce? So there's a lot of different ways that you can add value. You can add value by improving the look and feel of the property, so the cosmetic component of it. You can add value by improving the types of tenants that you have in that building, right? And that's usually going to go and coincide with the cosmetic component of it. Do businesses feel like they can go and park their place of business and succeed there? And at the end of the day, businesses want to be around other successful based businesses. The other way that you can add value is through operations. Operational excellence. And I think that's probably one of the biggest neglected areas that people don't focus on. Everybody focuses on the lipstick, but doesn't really get into the nuts and bolts of how to run a property as its own independent business. Because in essence, that's what it is. It's its own independent business. You're operating off of P&Ls. And so if you want to make more money, you're going to have to learn or figure out ways to improve your operations, reduce costs, right? So there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. And I think that's what's really exciting about, especially on the commercial real estate side of things, from an investment level, is you can add value in so many different ways. And you can structure deals in so many different ways. There's not always just one right way of doing things. And in residential, it's kind of cookie cutter, right? You have your forms, you do this. You can add value, right? And you usually add value through cosmetic because you're selling a lifestyle, right? On the residential side. Commercial, you're selling finances. You're selling a business. Does it produce income, or is it a place that I can produce income out of?
Right. Yeah. What attracted me to the commercial side is that on the residential side, the value of the residential property is simply based on the comparable sales. So what other houses around that other house are selling for, that's the value of the house. You can't exceed that. Whereas in commercial, the value of the property is a function of how much rent you're making, the net operating income. So if you're able to double your NOI, you can double the value of the property independent of what the comparable sales are selling for. So that's tremendous opportunity.
Well, and I think too is not just from a rent component, but a business component too as well. How much revenue can you generate out of this piece of property? So I always think of maybe like a dentist office, or think of a veterinary clinic or a surgical center or something along that produces revenue. It's a business. And so typically that asset will coincide, the value of that asset will coincide with the value of the business too as well. It's all about, can it make money? How much money can you make?
Exactly.
That's where you get your value.
Love it. So let's go back to your story on you took time and you made a big decision to now go into technology.
Yeah.
So walk us through that.
Which was an awesome experience. I joined technology when we were talking about kilobytes and floppy drives, and that it quickly grew into, megabytes and then gigabytes. And I mean, now we're sitting in a world where we don't talk about gigabytes. We're talking terabytes, and I don't even know what kind of bytes, but there's big bytes out there.
So what years were you in technology?
So I was in technology, which would have been late 90s, early 2000s. So I came in right during the whole .com boom. And this was a time of the industry that money was flowing everywhere. New startups, companies that don't exist today were formed back during this time, or the ideas were seeded back in this time. This is a time that Google never existed. This is a time where you thought about email and it was that you got mail. It was AOL. And they're the controllers of everything there, and then just the modems and the dial-ups. But I got to participate, and I had so many great experiences in that really started shaping me, not just as a salesperson, but I had the opportunity to go in and be a part of emerging businesses, emerging technologies, and see how people went about operating their businesses differently. And it was truly, I absolutely loved technology. I absolutely loved it. And to this day, I'm still very much a part of that. So a lot of my good friends, these are where our conversations are centered around. And it's kind of just because of that experience. And I worked for a lot of startup companies. So just going through being a part of the startup process, whether, there was companies that we went public, and there was companies that we went public and busted in the process. And there was companies that we were truly highly successful, and then in a short period of time, we weren't. Those companies no longer exist. And just to meet some of the very, there's been a lot of influential people that I've met during that whole period of time. So it's really kind of shifted me and shaped me into our business today, and even to why I got back into real estate. So as I was in this journey of technology, I kind of got into a place where I just wasn't happy anymore. And so I took time off, and it drove my wife nuts. We were newly married. I said, "Hey, I'm taking a year off." And she goes, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I don't know. I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to do anything right now." And she's like, "No, you need to do something." And "No, what are you doing?" So it was a period really challenging for my wife during that period. But to me, I was trying to soul search to find out what really drives me? What is it that I'm really passionate about? What do I really want to do? And so I looked at all kinds of opportunities during that time. I looked at different franchises. I mean, at one point,
in the world of real estate or outside of real estate?
Outside of real estate.
Just
I was looking
business.
at all different kinds of businesses. I mean, I came real close to investing in a business to go and repair dents at new car lots. That would have been the worst mistake I would have ever made. But I was soul searching. I needed to find my place in the world.
Yeah.
What was I really good at? What was I passionate about? What did I have a really true, deep understanding of? And, I've always been a part of real estate, even when I was in technology. But I started having some different conversations with different people, and one of the reasons why I got into real estate was I hated the industry. I really hated the industry, which seems kind of counterintuitive. Why would you go into an industry that you hate? And I hated the churn of it. I hated that new agents coming in were sold a promise, and then they were just churned through the system.
Wow.
You look at real estate and the industry as a total. Every new licensee that comes into with all these dreams and aspirations come into a meat grinder, and most likely 90% of the time they're out of the business in 2 years when it comes to either renewing their license or paying all the mounds of fees that you pay to be a part of being a real estate agent. And so I hated that aspect of it. And so what I looked at was I started looking at business models, and I utilized and leveraged the business models that I partook in when I was in working with much smarter people than me. What made us successful?
A successful startup. You're looking back at your technology. And that's a good point, is that you saw startups succeed, you saw startups fail, and that's exactly what every real estate broker or agent is. They're their own entrepreneur. They're running their own business. They are coming into real estate as a startup company themselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even to that point is I also worked for some major, large, national or international organizations that had the same failure points and shared the same successes. And you obviously in life, you always learn more from when you fail at something than probably when you do at succeeding. Right. But I had the great opportunity to kind of step back, look at it, and look at what made these organizations successful. And then what destroyed them. And there was a common theme. There truly was a common theme of what made a successful organization and what killed an organization. And what made a successful organization was a collaborative environment.
That's good.
I mean, it was people working independently of themselves in competition with other people, but friendly. So it was more of a peer pressure. Yeah. It was more of a peer pressure that, hey, Bob over here is kicking butt. What do I need to do in my business to improve? What's Bob doing? And if Bob doesn't share what he's doing to make him successful, how am I going to grow? And Bob, by sharing, was not only helping me grow, but he was growing in that process too as well. Wow. So that's what collaborative environment. Every successful sales organization I've been a part of had operated in that type of an environment. Now, that's not always the case. I've also been a part of that were really very micromanaged based. They follow the metrics. What are your dials per day? How many hours are you on the phone? What's your talk time ratios? And that coincide with sales, which there is some relevance to that, but that doesn't paint the whole picture. And I look back at one organization, and it's funny because I have conversations with good friends of mine that I worked with during this period of time at the same company, and we both had different experiences. They had a negative experience, and where I had a positive experience, even though it was in the same situation. I looked at more of the positive aspects of what the company did versus the negative. But getting back to that point and circling back, because you know me, I'm a talker, and I'll start going into different areas. But what made companies successful was the collaboration. But what killed the organizations? Greed.
Yeah.
Greed kills things faster. It is amazing how greed will destroy an organization. And greed is manifests its way in so many different ways, right? Ultimately, what greed is now I'm more independently worried about my success versus the overall success of the people around me too as well.
Right.
So that's what drove me. I looked at real estate, and this was an archaic business model. Absolutely archaic. Real estate's been ran the same way, and it hasn't been until the last 5 to 10 years that we're actually seeing change occur. And this is, I might have entered in with this concept way too early into where the maturity level of real estate is, but I knew technology was coming. I knew technology was going to come in and really interrupt this space. And so to me, I came in with the mindset is I wanted to change an industry because I hated it. I absolutely hated it because I was part of it. I was part of that churn. I was part of that meat grind, right? And I wanted to invest time in helping people become more successful. And so it's been a journey.
So let's talk about that. So yeah, your vision of changing the industry is a massive goal and undertaking. But let's just break that down. So I think at this time you're with a national big box brokerage, and what attracted you to JPAR in context of how that could align with your vision?
That was a journey in itself, but really with JPAR, there was a strong alignment between how the business was operating, what their fundamental core beliefs were. And it aligns so, I'm a guy, I'm not about the BS. I like simplicity. And I think too many times we make things more complex than what it is. And what I loved about JPAR was the simplicity of the business model. They were focused on productivity and service. And to me, I'm like, boom, because you can't have service if you don't have productivity, and you can't have productivity if you don't have service. And then, doing it with integrity. I mean, those are the fundamental core concepts of any type of business and so I looked at it, it's like, okay, this would be an awesome place to go and take this collaborative approach to introducing a business model within the framework of this franchise opportunity. And more importantly, too, the other thing that really drew me to it is all the business owners throughout the entire network operate off of the same systems. So there wasn't different transaction systems. There wasn't different back office systems. Everybody was on the same plan. And so, being a part of some other organizations, that was one of the biggest challenges is if you're looking to take something on a national level from a growth perspective, is now I have to negotiate in each market I go into a different set of operations, which it just becomes an operational nightmare. And then also in some cases, the more mature the organization, the more political headway that you have to go through. And so now you're playing a politicking game versus if you're in an organization that everybody's in growth mode and we're all working together for growth, the synergies are just align, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not competing with you. I'm helping you bring more revenue into your business. So those were the big things and the big ahas with JPAR for me.
Well, we're here. Let's talk about this podcast, the name of the podcast.
Yeah. So, as me and our journey here, right? It started almost 3 years ago. Right. We're coming up on next month.
That's right.
No, this month. In a couple more days. August 19th, I think it was.
Sorry, it's our anniversary.
I think it's August 19th, yeah.
Where are we going for our date?
Yeah. That's our 3-year anniversary. I don't know what I get for that. Do I get a plate or something? I don't know. I'll have to look that up on Google later. But no, it's the journey of this is, and why we're here doing the podcast is, the big thing that we're trying to accomplish is how do we help other people grow wealth?
Exactly.
How do we help them build it? How do we help them grow it? And how do you help them sustain it? Because I think the sustaining component is a huge piece. How do you make it transferable?
So as a commercial real estate broker and brokerage owner, we can come with a mindset of how are we going to get more sales?
Correct.
How are we going to get more clients? how are we going to get, so if we go and take that approach, we're going to be one of those companies that fails. But we're starting to realize, and I think you're realizing, and the name of this podcast is, no, we flipped the switch. Our entire purpose is helping them build wealth, whatever type of investor. So talk about our different, talk about the different divisions and the different types of investors that we have out there. And I guess, what are your goals?
Yeah. So, ultimately is the whole purpose of why we're here today, why Vantage even exists today, is to roll out a service that really truly supports the investor at what I would say is the highest level possible. And we're building towards that. We're not there yet, but we're building towards that. And so all with the premise that we want to help people build and grow and sustain wealth. Right. I mean, that's the sole premise of who we are and what we're doing. This is why we're here on this earth today.
Right. On the podcast, we are combining technology along with the collaborative approach. So if you and I, we have our ways of underwriting property, adding value, and we keep that to ourselves, and we keep it a secret, then that doesn't serve our purpose. We're not going to grow. But if we're on this podcast sharing our secret, sharing our niches, sharing the secret sauce, we're able to truly achieve what our passion is. And that's why you and I are so aligned, is that our passion really is about the investor growing their wealth. Yeah. So talk about the different stages of, we were talking about it in the car earlier on the way here, is the different levels of investors. So some can be institutional investors all the way down to
the average Joe. I mean, anybody. To me, it's, when you sit there and you define who you want to serve, right, is who is an investor? Well, an investor is really anybody that's willing to invest into growing their wealth. So whether you're a 9-to-5, worker out there and you're investing into our 401k, you have a house, well, guess what? You're an investor, right? And oftentimes it's just, I think where a lot of people get stuck is where to start, right? And that's kind of the whole evolution of why we're here is discuss those starting points, share, kind of best of practice. What are the institutional investors doing? How can I leverage that knowledge to, build a plan for myself and for my family? Because ultimately, I think that's what we're all kind of working towards, is how we're going to, support a lifestyle that we want to live. The premise too of this podcast is not a get quick rich scheme.
Exactly.
This is not a scheme. Right. This is a plan. This is a lifestyle. Right. We're not a Dave Ramsey either. We're not going to sit there and go through all the nuts and bolts of things, but we want to work people into a plan to help them achieve the goals that they're looking to achieve. And there's no right or wrong way of doing it, that's what I love about it. There's a lot of creativity that's involved in this whole entire process. So
talk about, I guess we can finish on one aspect, which is important, is as we grow our brokerage, we have associates that now work for you, that are under you.
Work with me.
And that's a good point. And that's what I'm getting at is, let's talk about what, a commercial broker that partners with us, what do we want to see? What behaviors do we want to see? What kind of vision would be a good fit working for us?
Yeah. So
working with us and partnering with us.
I have conversations, as you're well aware, every day about this subject matter. Is commercial real estate traditionally has been very intimidating for people to get into. If you're looking at from a salesperson role, right? I want to get into commercial real estate. And, commercial field has always been known as like that good old boys network, the dog eat dog world, or, and a lot of that is absolutely true. And that's because mainly it's the environment and the business model that exists with it. It's not a collaborative model. Right. And that's part of the problem and it's a lot of times is not the fault of the commercial broker on some of the negative experiences that exist out there. It's just they have too many plates that they're trying to spin all on themselves. And that's where we're different, is we want to get away from the transactional mindset. I need to have a shift in the mindset occur with our agent partners that get off of the transactional. This is a business that's about relationships.
Exactly.
You need to get relational. Stop thinking transactional. Transaction knowledge will occur as you get into the transactions, right? But how do we add value to people's lives, ultimately?
Exactly.
And so we're all in the same position. Every single one of us, anybody that's listening here, anybody that we're driving past on the road, we're all trying to accomplish the same thing. We're trying, at some level, trying to build wealth.
Right.
Whether that wealth is used just to pay my bills on a day-to-day basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis, or whatever the case might be, we're all trying to build wealth. And it's just one of those, welcome to America type thing, right? This is how we are built and structured. And so, we have to come off on how do we help other people achieve their goals? Because if we can do that, and that's done through relationships, by the way. That's not done through transactions. A transaction will occur because of the relationship.
So what happens when the realtor says to you, well, Tony, I'm just starting out in residential, or I'm even now transitioning from residential to commercial. I don't have any value. So they think they don't have any value to give, or they can't educate their clients. What would you say to that objection?
Hogwash.
Why is that?
I mean, at the end of the day, we all add value. We all have different experiences that we can add value to, right? And at the end of the day, it's not even necessarily about having the answers to the challenges. It could be as simple as just listening to what the challenges are, and then seeking the resources and helping people find the resources to meet those challenges. You don't have to be the one that has all the answers.
That's right.
Let's go crush this. We're at time.
Good time.
Look at it. We're having all kinds of fun. So don't let me talk. We'll have to pick up this conversation on our next go round.
That's right. All right. Well, Tony, that was a good introduction of where you've been, and what your passions are, and the vision that we have for an incredible corporation that is truly about building the wealth of the investors. So that I'd say that's a wrap for podcast episode, for our number 2 episode for Building Wealth Strategies, podcast number 2. See you next time.